everyone. Welcome back to another inspiring and exciting episode of On Location with Zara Durrani, produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. We're so excited to be back in the new year, 2024. Happy New Year to all of you watching and tuning in. And joining me now is someone who I got to know over last summer and was even more excited to recently discover the fact that she is a registered holistic nutritionist, and food and wellness is something I'm truly passionate about. Not just the whole January, New Year, New Me, but I truly wanted to bring her on the show to talk about food, how we can properly nourish our bodies, not just to lose weight, but for health over the years. I'm talking about the founder of Food and Soul, Dani Ross. Dani, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. How does it feel to be like, I know normally when we're hanging out, we're just talking, but like doing this proper introduction for you.
Yeah, it's pretty it's really cool to think something that, I came to Food and Soul, and how it came about was through my own personal health struggles, and just how lifestyle and nutrition kind of changed things for me. And I wanted to share that, kind of similar how you were just saying, how it can just change our lives in such a positive way. And food and nourishment's not just about losing weight, just overall well-being. So it's really cool to hear that as a business and being announced as a way to help people.
Completely. So let's dig into that, because I find that very fascinating. For example, it's like in my 20s, I was modeling. There were times, I've talked about this on the show, where I found myself working out daily, measuring myself daily, and, the obsession to look a certain way, and yet at the same time, what I was putting inside of my body, and the sugar cravings would be really high, and I didn't really receive any kind of proper guidance when it came to how to really care for yourself. And what we put inside actually does reflect in terms of how glowing your skin is, how bright your eyes are, how shiny your hair is. Yes, we can put the products on top, but what's going in your body makes the bigger difference. So I would love to hear your story of what truly inspired you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
If you can dig into what was it like before that led you to study nutrition and to be on this path.
So I guess how it all started for me was, I didn't even know it was starting. I guess through even starting in high school, in my early 20s, it was always that image of the perfect body and no fat, no carbs, all of these things. And so my idea of food and workout and nutrition, and as it came in, was very calorie counting, no more over these calories, each meal is this, I was keeping track of everything,
you had a journal.
Yeah, and
Okay.
cutting meat wise, cutting fat off food, and it was all the white breads, all of those things were no good, you don't eat them.
Can I ask you
of
something?
course.
Because that sounds so similar to my story as well. And I grew up in Pakistan and came to Canada at 17. Do you think partially some of that is what we see on television when we pick up the beautiful, when we did, there used to be all these beautiful glossy magazines, and you're looking at this photoshopped image, but being a teenager, you're looking at this and looking at yourself in the mirror, and you're wondering, okay, this is what the society says is beautiful, and feeling like I'm not measuring up.
100%. So much of that is, and I think that is what we're taught from a young age, is that is the ideal, instead of learning to love your insides and how you are as a person and growing that way, instead of always, or grow up as a comparison. We're always looking, and I find in society and like how things are in so many levels, not just in body image, but so much of life I find is a comparison instead of learning to like love yourself from the inside. And that sounds like such a cheesy thing, I think, but I think it's so important and so overlooked. And I think that goes even further as to like what we look like how we're acting, like what are we doing with people, like how are we going out, are we keeping up with the latest trends, like what does my car look like, what's inside my house, my furniture, like so much stuff. And I think so much of our self-worth and self-image is portrayed from the outside instead of from the inside.
And I feel like that journey can be like lifelong process. It's not like, okay, you arrive, because the triggers and I feel like also, especially with females, like, you know, in terms of, okay, in 90s, this is what works. Like, this is to look hot. These are the measurements. This is what the ads are like, the Calvin Klein ads and all of that. And then in the 2000s, and the reality shows and how the aesthetics completely shifted. I was at this more higher end gym working out a while ago, and I didn't even know that there were some of these procedures that the girls were talking about in the steam room. And I found that so fascinating, because I'm like, here we are, we have bar classes, boxing, all yoga, like breath work, all these different amazing classes. But then we're defining ourselves based on the measurements of different parts of our bodies. And I think that really skews your perception, because based on what advertising, Hollywood, or magazines are telling us is beautiful, then you're constantly not measuring up. Versus when we sort of look back, and I remember when I was 20 something, like I'm 41 now, back then I thought, okay, when you're 30, it's like you're over the hill.
Yeah.
You know, versus going in and to be like, no, actually, my beauty comes from here, and that comes from that. And it's a process. Like, you know, for me, I feel like it's yoga, movement, food is something that when it comes to eating well, that's something I struggle with. I certainly don't, you know, measure myself and all of that anymore. But I can go for the sweets, the croissant, and all of that, and let myself, so it can, you know, it can have that balance. And I know when I'm eating well, when I'm making my soups at home, when I'm having my salads and my smoothies, how I feel, where my energy is coming from. Versus when I'm eating popcorn and I'm like soothing myself in the moment with but I let myself eat those things, because I'm not gonna punish myself.
Exactly.
Because I remember back in the day, after I would eat a bar of chocolate, I would just feel so guilty. And versus now, I'm like, I'm craving chocolate. You know what? I'm gonna go for that 50% or 20, or even if I have that Cadbury something, it's okay.
I think that's really important, and I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with, in a sense of like, it's, and I did this too for so long, was like a black and white zone. It was like, you either eat good, and if you eat that chocolate bar, or if you have popcorn at the movie, or if you're out, like, that is so far off from your goals. And then I find, for me anyways, personally, what happened was that shame spiral. So it was like, I would have the chocolate bar, or I mean, like, ice cream is my go-to, and it still is to this day, and there is no way I'm taking ice cream out of my diet.
I have like keto ice cream in the fridge right now.
Like, I could, yeah, like ice cream, like all of, and we have so many great ice cream and gelato shops around town, like there's absolutely no way I will not go to those. And I think that's important too. I think it is. And like, you know, there's a difference between, like, what I used to do when I would have those is like, I would eat one bad thing, and then it would go into this like shame spiral. It's like, oh my gosh, like, how could I have done this? How could I put all this stuff into my body? How could I do this? And like sometimes, you know, I would be like binge eating in my car because I didn't want people to see me, and then I'd go inside and eat all of the healthy things, or like after I just like downed a McDonald's
I want to
meal.
hear what was it that you were eating? What were your favorites? Because I will tell you what were mine. Because I know when I would start, like I couldn't just have one cookie.
Mm-mm.
There was no such thing. It's like
Well, it's 100% like even today, like, you know, it's a point or two of like getting to know your body and like your triggers and all of that stuff, so similar to other things. Like, for example, like making these cookies, like,
which I'm gonna dig into. Can we see on camera these like delicious cookies?
like there's chocolate chips in there. So I know for myself, like, if I go to the shops and I buy a bag of chocolate chips and I'm not planning, and like my plan is to make something, and I'll have like one or two.
I'm gonna dig in.
Oh, please do. I'm gonna have another piece there too.
You said you had this for breakfast.
Yeah, these are great because these are, you can have them like for breakfast, for a snack during the day. They're full of like so much good stuff. You've got sprouted oats, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, chia, flax, like you've got a bunch of peanut butter.
You gotta share the recipe.
Yeah.
I think Julian off camera, his mouth is watering. Julian would like one as well. Julian, we have to share the love, you know.
But you know, like, pardon me, now I'm talking with my mouth full. But like chocolate and sugar and things like that, like sometimes like having one, I know like I can't have one, so it's like a matter of knowing yourself, and like, you know, if you do go off and end up filling up the bowl,
amazing.
thank you, of chocolate chips, like it's okay, you know. And I think
And these are no bake cookies.
I did bake these.
Okay.
These are baked, so it's just mashed up bananas. There are some sprouted oats. You can use whatever kind of oats you've got. There's some sunflower seeds, maple syrup, chocolate chip, oats, flax, chia. Just kind of throw it in there.
I like that if the sugar isn't overpowering, because for me, it's like I like to keep that. For me, like the fact that it's coming from either dates or banana, a natural source.
And then it kind of feeds your body's sugar cravings, and that's one thing too. Like, you teach clients and go through learning is just different ways of introducing new things to kind of curb those. We call them curb those cravings, but they're not necessarily, like, they don't necessarily have to be curbed. It's just your body's craving different energy sources and things like that. So learning what those cues are, and obviously too, like, one thing I always tell people is you've spent years forming these habits. Like, it's a slow, and it's frustrating because I find, like, too, in this day and age, everyone wants things to be fixed tomorrow, if not today. So it is a bit of a slower process in learning how to change these habits, because your body's got to be accustomed to them too. But in doing it in a slow, like, mindful, soulful way that works for you, because what works for you, what works for Julian, what works for me, is all going to be different. And that's, I think, too, where the comparisons come in and all the fad diets come in, is they might work for a short term, but they're not long standing, because you stop listening to your body and you're just listening to what's on the piece of paper, what's the latest trend coming from your, like, favorite person you follow on Instagram, and that works for them, and that's great, that works, you know. But I find too, like, learning to listen to your body, and that's something that's really hard to do.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend, Nicole, you may know, and you know, it's like talking about intuition and like listening to body's wisdom. And I understand, you know, she's like, how do I do that? And I feel like for me, when I in my teens or early 20s, the disconnect was so much. It started with me going into an acting program where we did movement, but more importantly, breath work, voice and breath, and like breathing, and breathing into the body, and connecting and breathing deeply, and all this stuff that I wasn't feeling inside, all the sadness or grief or whatever I wasn't feeling inside, that needed to come out, that as a performer I needed to have access to. And then getting inspired from that, I was fascinated with how much wisdom the body holds, and how it can talk to us. That I had this calling to go study yoga, and and it's like I'm pescatarian, but I will eat meat. I'm Muslim, so I will eat meat if it's halal once in a blue moon. It's not something I super crave, but I feel with foods, if my body is saying I need to eat meat, I will allow myself to eat that instead of restricting. Or if I'm craving bread, I will have bread instead of being like very strict and regimented. So I love the name Food and Soul, and I also hear a self-love journey. Like, as you talk about food and learning to love and accept ourselves over the years, and knowing it's not going to happen through one weekend workshop. It's a slow process. I feel like I've been a seeker for a long time, but it's like the healing process, like my therapist says, it's going to take time. Time takes time. It doesn't just happen, like right away. So tell us about that, like, that journey for you, and then what was the realization that you came to when you decided, I'm going to make this change and love myself more through nourishing my body, through nourishing my soul, and then sharing that wisdom that I've learned with others.
Yeah, that is. So I think for me, what kind of happened, and it was, I had a pretty wild and crazy life leading up to maybe about 6 years ago, and when I changed my lifestyle and wanted to get healthy and live better, like I started doing all these things that I thought, I should be doing, like the working out so much, and like the eating the good foods, and like saying yes and socializing more, and like going out and like working. Like I worked also at an oral surgery office, so like doing hours there and helping because I wanted to be around people, and starting up just trying to change my lifestyle for what I thought was the better. But what I didn't realize is that all of this was taking such a toll on my body and even my mental health. Like just always striving to be perfect and do the next right things and doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing and what I thought was making other people happy and would make me happy. And I didn't realize that my body was slowly giving me these signs of like, no, you need to slow down, like maybe disconnected, things like that, until finally, like for me, my body just went, no, this is enough. Like I had, so at one point where I started going, I had to end up going to my doctor and to the hospital because at one point I looked like I was about 7 months pregnant. I was struggling to drink water or eat food. And not because I didn't want to, but because my body was so dysregulated and just completely oblivious. Like, and I was oblivious to what was going on. So I had gone through a couple specialists. I'd done every scope, scan, X-ray that we could think of to try and figure out what was happening. But I'm lucky that I have a really good family doctor, and so we kind of started looking. He really listened to me when I started talking about more of a holistic approach, more of a lifestyle approach. And that's when I also started going back to school. And just things like reducing my stress level, because the tolls that stress can have, yes, mentally on your body, but also physically on the inside, on your digestive system, on your microbiomes, like all of the things that we don't realize. And like your adrenal glands and your different organs and like your thyroid, like so many things. Like our body is so connected, and I don't think we realize how connected it is.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've gone off topic.
No, you completely. Honestly, you completely haven't, and I can relate to that so much. I remember I was doing my yoga teacher training in Bali, and because I'm in a new environment with new people that I don't know, and at that moment I didn't recognize even though I'm on a spiritual journey, when feelings come up, I need to feel them. Because the disconnect was still there, or the idea that on a spiritual path, I had this idea that I should always just be zen. Well, that takes time and effort, and part of my journey has been to give myself permission to feel my feelings. And that comes from sitting still, taking a nap, like lying down, and being like, what's happening? And sometimes I need to cry, I need to journal, I need to release those things. I could cover them up through, like, you know, eating a bag of like Cheetos or popcorn. I don't eat Cheetos anymore, but like popcorn. I try to go for healthier options, like, you know, popcorn made with coconut oil and, you know, this and that. If someone brings in Chicago mix, I'll eat it. But I remember when you mentioned about being bloated, my stomach was hard as a rock, and it was painful. And I was eating fresh farm food, like smoothies, like papaya smoothies, like you take the papaya from the tree and mangoes and all of that, and wondering what's happening. It's because even though I was meditating and doing yoga in a peaceful environment, I wasn't giving myself permission to really feel what's happening inside. You know, and something my yoga teacher brought up, and I remember because I was so much about being the perfect student and my presentation and everything looking flawless and all of that, that when she critiqued me, and her criticism was, relax, I just started crying. And I think that's what needed, and that's been part of my process and my journey of like breathing and feeling. You know, and when I'm breathing and feeling and giving myself permission to feel, so I'm in touch with my feelings, I'm not doing the overeating. I'm going and making the big pot of veggie soup. You know, making those power balls, and I will soon learn to make these amazing cookies at home. But for me, when you mentioned your stomach pain, I resonate with that so much, because I couldn't understand, what is this pain? Well, that's the pain because I'm not feeling it. At least for me, I'm not a holistic nutritionist, and part of my journey was like, I have to feel what's happening in here. What is my body trying to tell me?
The big thing about that is too, like, so much of the stress and things we feel, I don't think we identify as stress, but our body does, because our body doesn't know the difference of stress from running from a bear to save our life, to the stress of wondering, like, how is this going to happen at my job today? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm feeling really sad and lonely. Like, our body feels that stress the same way. And so when your body is in that stress, fight or flight mode, whether we realize it or not, the whole other side of your nervous system, that's your rest and digest system, doesn't kick in. It's one or the other. You've got rest or digest or fight or flight. So when you're in a constant state of like always striving for perfection, always trying to do the next right thing, like always in this go, 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 like gotta keep going, your body, your insides, your subconscious, none of it realizes and gets the chance to be like, okay, let's just relax for a bit.
And I'm sure that even a space like a village in Bali that I was at, and surround on this farm and all these fields and the mountains, and I'm away from civilization.
Brain's still going, your body, you're still trying to do
still
that.
bringing the energy from here, there.
Your body holds on to that. And so often too, when I work with clients who and like myself, and like what I do is when I work with people is a lot of it is, yes, I have some studies and research and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of it is just sharing through my own experiences, because what I've learned is holding on to those emotions and feelings, whether I want to acknowledge them or not, my body still feels them. And that's oftentimes when you reach for those foods, and we talk about emotional eating, because really what we're doing is we're looking for comfort, because on the science side of things, there are those chemical connections between your hormones, and a lot of people think hormones, like women, PMS, like hormones are so much more than that. Like there's your happy hormones, like your digestive hormones, so much more. And so when you're reaching and you're getting those like chocolates and chips and like things like that, which are 100% okay to eat, but when you find that you're eating them mindlessly, or you're eating them because
As self-soothing.
yeah, because your hormones and like those hits of happiness you get when you eat those things click on as fast as a light switch.
So tell us about what are some of the main things you assist clients with? Like when someone comes to you, what are they really, like, I'm sure since you've been working as a holistic nutritionist, do you see like a pattern with your clients that you're assisting them with?
So I think a main theme I see with a lot of my clients is they're doing all the right things. Like I know these things, I'm doing these things, but none of them are working. Why? And I think a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about, or what we have been talking about, is the emotional and spiritual side of things. Are you being connected to yourself? Like, because we can do all of the things and none of it works. But our body is so intertwined and connected that if something's off over here, this side's not going to work as well. And eventually it just kind of all goes in. So working with clients, what I find is kind of, and it's so far off from what people think when they come in, it's like, okay, we're just going to work on my food, which is a big part of it. But it's also getting down to the reasons why we're reaching for these things, why we feel so disconnected. And a lot of times, addressing the situations as opposed to what we're putting in our body. Because I find when people are more connected to their body and their spirit and what they're feeling, your choices tend to slowly switch.
Do you find it also has to do with self-esteem and self-love?
Oh, very much so. Like I think, so like when we get to the point of things aren't working and we want to be a certain way and we're not, like, a lot of times like we feel like shameful and guilty and like we're not good enough because we don't fit into these pants anymore, or I don't want to wear my bathing suit out there because I don't feel confident. But I find a lot of it is learning to feel confident in who you are in the moment can help you be, reach your goals, your health goals, the image that you want. And sometimes too, like that image changes as you learn to love yourself a little bit more. Like I struggle with that sometimes too. It's like, we went out for dinner the other night and I was like, I don't know if I could put these jeans on. I had a little extra Christmas love. And things like that. And then I think, well, what are people going to think like when I'm out? Like these are the thoughts that go through my head. And, it's learning to tell myself, like, it doesn't matter what people think about me. Like most of these people I'm never going to see again. And, the thing is, most people are thinking the same things about themselves. And it's learning to be like, I am okay in myself as I am. And people are going to love me whether my jeans fit tightly or not.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's interesting what also the size on the jeans is. I'm just sharing something personal. So I went to Paris a couple of months ago to pick up my old belongings, and when I was in Paris, in a new country, living where I don't speak the language, and I was in love in Paris, also had my heart broken in Paris, figuring out where to stay, where to live, all the banking, the whole 9 yards. And all of that included with walking a lot. I wasn't working out, but we just, I became very small. So a lot of my clothing from Paris, it's not like coming all the way up, like, we can't like zip up and like, now I've got like my little booty now and like we can't like zip up all the way. And was my old thinking that kicked in, oh well, I can lose weight. And I was like, you know what? I can also lose these pants.
Yes.
They don't need to sit in my closet
Mhm.
as a thing that's gonna be this reminder. You need to lose. You know, I
Mhm.
remember growing up in my home country, it's like hearing something is everything looks beautiful if you're a certain
Mhm.
measurement, size, whatever. Versus, I remember reading in Louise Hay's book in my mid 20s, even if you're on a journey of like becoming more fit and whatever that ideal looks like to
Mhm.
you, touching your body and telling yourself, I love you as you are.
Mhm.
I love me as I am. And I think it was only a couple of years ago, like I didn't start it then, that I started to do that, like as I'm putting lotion on my body.
Mhm.
And there were tears that were coming out. You know, and as I remind myself, because in my industry, it's like performing and modeling and acting and all of that, and you're auditioning up against other people, and like who books the job, I didn't book it, why? That going with that and coming back in here, okay, who am I?
Mhm.
And what does that mean? And that is more than the size of my jeans.
Mhm.
You know, that's more than like my t-shirt. It's okay if I'm not that size I used to be. I'm gonna pick a size more. It's okay. I don't need to be the smallest size that there is.
Mhm.
That is such a thing in the brain. I'm like, what is? Where does that
100%.
come from? You know. Anyways, because I do think that food and nourishing ourselves, and as you were talking, I feel as I've developed more self-love, I take time now to be in my kitchen.
Mhm.
That when I'm stressed, and instead of ordering in, instead of doing the Uber Eats, to be like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna go downstairs to the market, pick up something, and the act of chopping up something and doing that, I'm not perfect at it,
Mhm.
but there's something about when I'm doing that and I'm cooking and there's those smells, the aromas in my home, it brings this like vibe of warmth.
Mhm.
But it's taken a long time for me to get there.
Oh,
It did. I'm
100%.
41.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, I have on my website. I was sitting down. It was one of those days where I had so many things on the go I was supposed to be doing, and the blog post is my anxiety hit and I made soup, because what happened to me that day, I was planning on writing an article about cholesterol and fats and like how your body needs them and hormones and all this stuff, and like just doing the research and thinking about all the other stuff I had to do that day. Like my body just went into this like my form of like perfectionism I have. It's like if I'm not going to be able to do everything perfectly, like my body just shuts down and I don't want to do it. My heart starts going and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do it. And what I've slowly learned to do over time is, because what I used to do, and I talk about this in the article, is like I just want to throw the blanket over my head, turn on the TV, reach for the bag of chips, and just like eat my feelings away. But what I've learned to do, and what I did this day, and it did take a while. Like I ended up calling my boyfriend at work and being like, I might need some help after work. Like I've got to walk the dog. My kitchen's a mess. Like I just have
That
things I
is
need
big.
to do.
That's big, asking for help.
And that alone just took like a little bit off this shoulder. And then it was like, okay, what am I gonna do next? And it did. I took my dog outside for a walk. We didn't go for long, but just the action of moving my body, getting things going, getting some blood flow. We went to the end of the street and back, because at the time I was like, this is all I can do. And I came back and I had a butternut squash there, so I just quickly chopped that up, some stock, put that in there, and that was a soup that I made in I had an orange, ate that. Because what I've learned is when your body's in those times of stress, like giving it that food and that nourishment is love to yourself. It is giving your body the things that it needs. And yes, you can still have, like there are days where you're still gonna have that ice cream, because and what that does, and that talks about too, is it gives you those hits, those happy hit feelings, and so you do get that instantly.
So you're not depriving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not living in this state of like, that ice cream, I don't get to eat it, and then boom, you know, it's like you come home with like tubs of ice cream and sitting there.
But yeah, and it's just like a matter of like what you put into your body also fuels your body. You know, it's kind of like thinking, I mean, like, so many people use the analogy of like, you have like a really fancy car and you put in like the cheapest gas, like it doesn't run as well. I mean, like, I don't like using that analogy because I do not have a fancy car and I use the cheapest gas. But you know, it's just kind of like, if you think of it in terms that like work for you, like, I don't know, it's kind of like if you're feeling crummy already, you can have a quick instant like hit of good, but then it kind of puts you back into that spiral. So why not, and this is too where practice comes in. You know, it's like have something that's good, yummy, nourishing, you know, taking the time, like you are saying, to like make something for yourself. There's a bit of a reward in that, to be like, yes, I did this, I made this, in loving and nourishing myself. Like that's what it's about, I think.
So tell us about, excusez-moi, as I enjoy the cookie and burp. What does holistic nutrition mean? And how do you specifically help your clients? Like, you know, it's like, for example, as soon as you were saying meal prep the other day, my ears were like, oh, Dani, I know, you know, tell me more. Like, because sometimes for me, when life gets really busy working in film and television and I'm running around and I have auditions, like I was taping something late last night, and one of the things that I'm doing now is keeping my almonds and dates out. So instead of like wanting to crack open, actually I don't even have a bag of chips anymore. You know, if I'm craving, my blood sugar is going down, like reaching for that versus like subtly, slowly making those better health decisions. But I feel like I can always learn and improve that, you know, should I be eating that at the end of the day? Yeah, sometimes I just eat just out of habit. If I see something, I will eat it. Like when I'm on a film set, when you go to Crafty, you're like, well, look at all this food. Who's gonna eat it? It should be me. So I would love to hear what holistic nutrition means and how specifically, what is your process? Like when someone new comes to you, and how are you able to help individuals?
So holistic nutrition, in my version of how I interpret and what it is it's working with individuals for individuals. And what I mean by that is there's no blanket group of people. Like it is like as I was mentioning before, all of us are different. All of our bodies are completely biochemically different. Like nothing, like we might have some things that work similar for some of us, but it's not all going to be the same. So it's looking at each person as an individual, each issue, each symptom that comes up as an individual, and it's figuring out what the root cause of that is. Not fixing the symptom, the quick fix. It's figuring out how can we make this better. Like let's improve on things. And so what the process is when clients come to me is, you know, we've got obviously there's, as every office and thing does, is an intake form where we kind of go over what habits you're looking to change, what concerns are coming up, things like that. And then I'll go over that, and I do have, it's called an NSP. So it's a big old questionnaire that sounds like to clients I'm asking them the same questions over and over, but it's kind of trying to figure out, you know, which areas we can work on, where we can start. And that's one way of doing things. But, you know, sometimes people just want help with changing habits or looking for meal prep and stuff. So people come wanting things, and you know that's also an option too. But when it comes down, and usually, I mean, ideally when we work together, I work with clients on a 3-month basis because we're trying to make changes in healthy plans and just changing a lifestyle. So we'll meet weekly.
Wow. Do you find, like, for example, someone like me, I need like ideas. You know, sometimes I'll be watching like TikTok or Pinterest or you know, some cooking show, and I'll be, oh yes, when someone shows me that they're doing it and I'm watching it step
Mhm.
by step, I learn more with that. Or like my neighbors around me will make some healthy cookies or pancakes or protein pancakes
Mhm.
and okay, yeah, I can do that. I can, you know, make this like gluten-free protein pancake
Mhm.
that I don't even feel guilty. I mean, not that there should be guilt in what we're eating, but someone like me, it's hard for me to learn from a cookbook.
Mhm.
I'm an experiential learner, so I need someone to guide me.
Mhm.
You know, and part of that is like one of the things that I want to learn is taking in more greens
Mhm.
and more proteins
Mhm.
and how in an exciting way I can incorporate that in my life, in my food, so I'm also not getting bored.
100%. So with clients, what we do is everyone's a bit different. So some clients are like, just give me my weekly meal plan with all my recipes, grocery lists, everything set out. Perfect, that's done. Easy, I can send that to them. I have one client and she is not a cooker, not any, gets overwhelmed in the grocery store. So she lives locally, so one of her sessions, we went to the grocery store.
Oh, great.
So, you know, we did 2 sessions. We did one at like the local markets and Safeway, all those things. And another one, she also has 2 kids and a husband she cooks for too. So we did a Costco trip just to look for maybe like prepackaged or things that are easier to make.
And you
like
tell
that.
them why and what you're going to use this for and looking at the ingredients. That's so you're very hands-on.
Yeah, and then there's too like some clients are like, I can barely boil an egg. You know?
That used to be me when I was 20.
So it's just like looking for, okay, let's look for a base, like a base recipe that you can easily change and add things to. And then there's some people, you know, yourself, you mentioned like, I want more proteins and more grains. And it's funny you mentioned that because this year, and it's also too, and it's also working for like budget friendly. I try and do. So this here is using that dill that was in my fridge. What this is it's cottage cheese. Chuck it in the food processor. I had extra dill that was in my fridge that I bought for a recipe. Like how many times do you buy parsley or like cilantro or something?
I think Julian's eyes
are chuck that in there. And then you know, this one is more of a dill pickle because I had a half empty jar of dill pickles in there. Throw a splash of that in there. You've got a dill pickle dip. Proteins, you get your greens. Like this is great. You could do chips or pita bread, throw it in wraps and things, and it's
so good.
Yeah.
So do you cut up your veggies often? So
I do. One thing that I do find quite helpful too is pre-prepping my food when I come home from the grocery store. Because oftentimes what I'll do is like during the week or things when things are busy, like I don't want to chop things. I don't want to like have to figure out what's in there and organize. So usually when I come home from the grocery store, I'll fill up my sink with a bit of warm water. And I use a bit of apple cider vinegar, like the stuff with the mother. Like if you pick up apple cider vinegar and you look at the bottom and it's all foggy, and you're like, oh, this stuff's off. It's not. That's the good probiotic stuff in it that also helps kill a lot of germs and bacteria as well. Really good for your gut and your microbiome.
So do you take apple cider vinegar in the mornings? Like that was a habit I was doing for a while. Now I'm out, so I need to go get it.
So I did for a little bit, and I mean that's also one of those things that can be person dependent because it can be quite harsh on your stomach.
Yeah.
Especially for some in the morning. So when I was having a lot of bloating and stomach issues, and I figured out kind of what was going on, I did take that for a little bit, but I also incorporate it in a lot of things, like in dressings or some of my like juice shots, things like that. I'll incorporate it in. But I find for me, like I'll take it in small bits in the morning for like a short period of time. But for me, I don't do it long term just because I don't like doing it often. But
I know
it
tasted like medicine. Like I heard that it's better to dilute it instead of just taking the shot. But I hear so many benefits of like that or hot water. I have gotten in the practice, especially if I'm going out to a restaurant or anywhere. I'll just ask for hot water and lemon or lime just to Or even if I go to friends, like they know I'm like hot water and lemon or lime. Like it's so soothing. It's so calming.
Yeah, it is really nice. It's good. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefits to it. And yeah, throwing it in the sink with your veggies and stuff just helps clean, because yes, they try and we like buy organic and fresh fruits and veggies, but sometimes like the way with prices and inflation and depending on what's going on that week, or I might not buy everything organic. So putting it in this way just gives it a natural clean, takes off some of that stuff. I rinse them, dry them off. I'll cut half of them, chop them up so they're just in the fridge. And another good way of keeping your veggies fresh a little bit longer, like your celery and carrots. If you put them
we do like kale.
in a jar or a container with a bit of water, they'll last a bit longer, so they don't go all floppy, or if they do go floppy, you can just throw them in a bit of water and just kind of revitalizes them instead of just chucking things out.
Okay. That's because I know from my herbs, like cilantro and parsley, like, so would you put them in a...
Those ones I use a little glass jar, cut a little bit water, kind of like a vase, and just keep them in the fridge that way.
Oh, that's so cute, because I always find, I'm like, okay, the first day it's great, second day, and then it just goes downhill.
It's like flat and floppy.
Yeah, I love cilantro. So tell us about working with individuals on a 3-month basis. So you mentioned, you do this like intake forums, you get to know them and their eating habits and their goals. And what else does that look like, in the 3 months? Like you're going to the grocery store with them, you're meeting with them on a weekly basis, like in person or over Zoom?
So it depends. I mean, nowadays most people do want to do a Zoom meeting.
Saves time.
Yeah, and it's convenient for a lot of people. And then too, since COVID, the space I was working in has gone away. So I do a lot of Zoom. If people are looking at in-person, we can kind of figure out and coordinate an in-person meeting. And it is just meeting up. So after that first initial consult, we kind of work on, hey, these are our goals for this week. And it is starting off slow, because one thing I find too, and this is with changing any habits, is starting small. Because if you want to change and you want to change everything all at once, take all of that information, chances are, as hard as you try, you're not going to be successful. And I don't mean that in like a mean or negative way, but trying to do everything goes back to that overwhelm and burnout. So taking one small habit and building on that, what I find sets people up for success. So that's what we do. We meet weekly for a half an hour call or a visit, whatever kind of works out, and we figure out like what's worked well last week, what's worked well, and how can we improve on that, and what do we need a bit of help on this week. So we do talk a lot about food and meal planning and prepping, and okay, what's in your fridge from last week, and we build on that. And then we talk about, okay, what are we doing lifestyle wise, like what are we working on. So sometimes it's as simple as like starting just journaling a little bit, or have you been outside? Let's start with, and some people, we have everybody starting different, right? So it's starting where somebody is. It's working with where you are, with what you have. There are people, who gym memberships and trainers, and other people who haven't been to a gym or don't want to go to a gym. So it's okay. This week, let's start with a 10-minute walk around the block. That's all you gotta do.
I'll tell you something so funny. You're gonna laugh, and you guys may judge me.
No judgment.
So I literally, and I canceled one of them now. I have a gym in my building. I have a yoga studio like 2 blocks away, and I had 2 gym memberships. Like one was just like literally $12 a month, but I just hadn't gotten around to canceling it because it was close to my old building. And another, it had a few machines that are not in my building and at the other gym. So I'm like, I'm going around collecting these gyms and these places, and I'm like, well, how often are you using it? And when it really comes down to it, and that's why I have the weights and everything and yoga mat and everything at home, because I'm like, just tell yourself, Zara, 10 minutes. Or taking the flight of stairs, like I'm pretty high, so I will,
It's funny, when I was in the elevator, I was thinking, oh dear Lord, like if the elevator goes, like that's a whole lot of stairs.
Well, I've never gone down, but I've taken them up often, and I recruit my neighbors to doing it with me, so we turn it into like a little competition. Oh, how many minutes? What did you? But it's that simple thing of when it's snowing, and I love the snow, but if I'm feeling like I don't want to, and I want to even have a little change of state internally, that moving my body. So when it's like a dark gray day, what can I do to like change how I'm feeling? And when my heart gets pumping and blood is flowing and I'm breathing more, at the end I'm just feeling better. I know everyone talks about the benefits of working out, but that mixed with nutrition, it's just next level. I would like to hear what are some of the things you've implemented through your journey through studying, and thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly about your story, and that in this process and now going into this path, what are some of the things you've learned and have now implemented, and some things you would like to implement?
I think one of the biggest things that I've started doing would be journaling. Journaling has had a huge impact in my life, and I don't have...
At a specific time of day, or just...
I usually try and do an evening, just because my mornings I've got different routines, and sometimes it wouldn't work for me to sit down. So at the end of the day, I try and sit down and journal, or if I have something going on and I'm feeling agitated or I just can't figure it out, I'll just pick up a pen and start writing. And when I first started writing, the person who suggested journaling to me, I was like, how are you supposed to journal? Like, am I supposed to follow some form of like plan? Like, what are you supposed to do? And there are prompts, like if you're looking for and you're the type of person that wants prompts and things, there's lots of free ones out there. You can just type in Google, but for me, I'll just sit down and I talk, and this is also how I feel spiritually connected to myself and to a higher power, is I write as if I'm writing to them. This is what's going on in my day. This is how I'm feeling. And oftentimes, like, if I
love
don't...
that, Dani. I feel like I do that here and there, but I've never really intentionally done that.
And it's just like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, like this is going on, and I swear 9 times out of 10, whatever I can't figure out or whatever is going on, when I thought I'd be like writing 2 sentences, it's filled up 5 pages, and there's just that sense of it's out of my head and on a piece of paper, and it's just giving me a bit of clarity. I feel connected to myself, up to a higher power, and I'm just more in touch with my body. So that's been a big thing for me over the years. Another thing that I implement is an 80-20 rule. So that is, in terms of like my food and my nutrition and things like that, because for so long I had the yes or the no foods. Like, we do this or we do that. Like, it's one or the other. But I find having an 80-20 rule, 80% of the time I'm on track. I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing that, I've set out for myself. But you know what? We're not perfect. And giving myself that grace period of being like, oh, this is 100% okay, just takes off that, like, I don't know, the feeling that I put on myself, and just gives me a sense of like, this is not a bad thing.
I love that. And I'm so glad you mentioned the journaling. I know for me, when I'm doing it, like, I do it like Julia Cameron style, like artist way, writing whatever comes to you, preferably first thing in the morning, not looking at the phone. That is something difficult for me, we have our moments, but I will like sit here with my tea or my coffee, probably coffee, and just writing whatever comes to me. I know we have just a couple more minutes to go. I would love to talk about mental health and nutrition. That how eating well, how whether it is through a service or meal prep or whatever, or making your own food, that how food can impact our anxiety, our depression, our outlook towards the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a topic.
As I reach for our cookie.
That is a topic. Actually, I mean, those are things that I put in there. Like, those are full of like omega-3s, like lots of brain healthy things. But mental health and nutrition, like I feel like that's a whole like hour on itself. Like, it's such a big topic, and I feel like it's something that is so underlooked, because I think it goes back to talking about like what we put in our body essentially fuels our body, because our body uses what we put in it for energy. It uses it to feed our brain, to feed our cells, all of those things. So if we're putting food into our body that potentially, causes inflammation or raises our insulin or sugar a lot, like that's how our body's feeling and fueling. It's not just necessarily making the good food and hormones and making our body feel loved and nourished that we need. And there is like a big discussion and topic of like your gut brain axis, of how your gut's your second brain, and a lot of the things communicate back and forth. So if things are a little bit wonky in your gut and your body and your intestines, where a lot of stuff that our body uses is made, it doesn't necessarily connect proper. And if things aren't functioning, if we're not getting the proper minerals and vitamins and foods like that our body does need to function and feel healthy, it does definitely have that toll on us. And so often too, like if your body's feeling crummy or you're not feeling great, it affects your mental health in the state of like, if you think about how many times, like for example, you've got a bummed knee, or like you're not, like just as an example, like feeling good, like you're not gonna get up and moving and going around and outside, and it just kind of takes a toll on your mood. And the same goes for like your inside and your bodies. Like if things aren't functioning or feeling well, it's not all being processed proper. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, the way I describe that.
Of course, and like that, it's certainly a journey that I'm on. Like I'll be 42 this summer, and I remember like last summer I kept getting so sick, and I was so grateful. Work was really, really busy, even when the strike was on, and getting a chance to produce shows and working as a content creator, as a voiceover actor, as a consultant, and all of that. Like I was working a lot, and then that would lead to going for the pizzas, the fried foods and happy hours and friends. It's like, because socializing is also really important, but it's like, what choices am I making when I am socializing? And then how do I feel afterwards? Yes, it smells really good right now. And this year, like also thinking of the long run, I'm very blessed genetically, alhamdulillah, that, I've all my life, I've just eaten whatever. But now, like when I work out and I lift, it's to become stronger, physically, for my bones and everything. But really making an effort to make that green smoothie, to drink those things and eating the soups that I'm making instead of buying it at the store, and noticing how clear my mind is. Because as an artist, as a performer, as a creative, like you were saying, what you're putting in it comes out. When you squeeze a lemon, you're not going to get apple juice, you're going to get lemon juice, Anything that we haven't covered today that you would like to perhaps add or share with our audience? Something that you've learned in your journey and your relationship with food, that you've learned over the years, and also with helping people?
I think one of the most important things to remember in all of this is change takes a while, and it's not something that happens overnight. And it's also one of those things, you get from it what you put into it, so it's not saying like go 100% all the time. It's remembering that 80-20 rule, like making small changes, like putting a bit of work in one direction. Change takes time, but you will see those outcomes. And to be kind to yourself. I feel like so often the guilt and the shame we put on ourselves for not doing things perfectly is more harmful to our bodies and to our souls than if we are, you know, like, give yourself some grace period.
Completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking
Thanks
the
for
time.
chatting with me.
I'm excited about learning more about recipes for breakfast cookies.
Yes.
You know, different vegetables and fruits that I can add into my diet, because I know I can get stuck into my little thing and my little routine, versus learning that, oh, I can use eggplant like this, or I can use squash to do this. I know that I have my vegetables and fruits that I feel comfortable with, but adding more variety and more colors into my diet. And I know that the more colorful my fridge looks,
Yeah.
and what I'm putting inside, and I've read and heard stories of individuals. I can't think of this. She's a famous vegan on Instagram, and she did meal prepping for Beyonce when Beyonce was doing vegan diet, or focusing on living a vegan lifestyle. And this girl shows pictures of how her eyes used to be dark brown, and now her eyes are the same color as yours. Like, they're very light teal. And but the healing journey, I think she's also diabetic. I can't think of her name right now. She's Lebanese or Greek. And how the more fresh fruits and vegetables that she was putting into her body, and how she got strength, and how she trains, and that connection of the journey of loving ourselves and healing through food, because that's what it really comes down to, is using food as medicine.
Yeah, I think it's quite an amazing thing. Like, there's I think it's like Socrates, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Just how if, you know, letting your body have what it's naturally needing, and how it can, the body's such an amazing thing of how it can repair itself if given the right opportunities. And just learning to listen to your body and your needs, and just putting, like, eat the rainbow. That's all. Like, kind of like you were saying, eat the rainbow and you can't go wrong. You'll get 99% of things you need from eating the rainbow.
Amazing. Well, we'll stop there. Thank you so much for your time today, Dani. Really appreciate you bringing some amazing breakfast cookies for us, and veggies that I'm going to devour afterwards. And I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you more. And if you guys are interested, you can also get in touch with Dani. We'll share her information. I hope you found this episode inspiring, this conversation inspiring. If you did, please do get in touch to let us know. Once again, Dani, thank you so much for joining us.
Me.
And wishing you all a very, very happy new year and a blessed year. Thank you for watching.